All right. Oh, it talks to me.
That's new. It's a privacy thing. So if you're doing your meetings by Zoom and you're going to record them, everybody will have to acknowledge that they're being recorded.
Oh,
So
there you
cool.
go.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get going here so we can give everybody back their evening. Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Honea. I'm your current District 13 Director, and I'm finished with that role on June the 12th. On this call with me are Catherine Shook and Lori Burton, who are the incoming co-presidents for Cherokee County Council. I see Scott Steinbrenner, incoming vice president for Cherokee County Council. I see Marilyn Reedy, who is incoming treasurer for Cherokee County Council. Is anybody else from council on?
Tiffany Hairgrow is.
Oh, there's Tiffany. Okay. And also another vice president. Yes. Is that right?
No, Tiffany's secretary.
Secretary. Okay. I should have printed my list. And then also joining us tonight is Amanda Weber, who is the current District 13 treasurer, as well as the state treasurer. And I see that everybody's putting names over here, over in the chat, which is great. Thank you for doing that. And we're going to go ahead and get started. Throughout the event this evening, please feel free to ask questions. Catherine is going to monitor the chat. And if there's something that needs to be addressed right away, we will do that. I tend to get to talking and just go, go, go. So stop me if you need to. We will also send out this deck once we are finished. It's been updated. This is the same deck that we delivered last year, but it's been updated with a couple of new things. And we'll send this out to all Cherokee County Council units. Okay. Any questions before we begin? Cool. All right. So preparing for your audit and 990. This is something that most units dread because it means you have to get all of your paperwork organized and hand it off to somebody else. And it's kind of this notion of, oh my goodness, somebody's going to find all of the things, all the commas that I didn't put in the right place, and that one signature that got missed, and so on and so forth. So we're going to talk about what the audit actually is. We're going to talk about how to find an auditor. We're going to talk about the documents that you have to have. We're going to talk about your 990. There is a big change this year that some of you already know about. And then we'll talk about the submission process, which is also changing this year, but we have not actually seen it in action yet. So we're just going to sort of talk you through what we think is going to happen. All right. So first up, you have to find an auditor. There are a couple of ways that you can do this. You can use the one that you've used previously. You can reach out to your council rep for recommendations. If you reach out to your council rep, they should always give you at least 2 or 3 to choose from. You can reach out to units that are in your area. So for example, for the Sequoia zone, y'all might all reach out to each other and say, who are you using this year? And share information that way. There are some things to think about though. The person who does the audit cannot be related by blood or marriage to any account signer, should not have materially participated in the unit during the year because you want an independent audit, and cannot be an employee of Cherokee County School District, period. No exceptions. Okay. So when you are choosing an auditor, make sure that those conditions are met. The person who does your audit should also be experienced in PTA and in either nonprofit bookkeeping or accounting, at least to some extent. So the auditor's job is technically to note procedural discrepancies, to verify your income and expense, and to provide comments as to things that you might need to do differently. The common misconception, though, is that the auditor's job is to catch a unit doing something wrong. And occasionally that does happen. I've seen it happen maybe 3 times in the entire time I've been doing audits, which is going on 10 years. But for the most part, the auditor's job is to teach. The auditor should develop a document that shows you how to do things differently to protect yourself and to protect your unit. So if we can shift our thinking to the auditor is not here to pick on me, but instead the auditor is here to teach me, it helps us to embrace this notion of being audited. I'll be honest with you, I've been a treasurer for a long time now, and I really hate being audited because it means all my warts are showing. It means that I'm having to demonstrate that I make mistakes, but the truth is we're all human, so therefore we all make mistakes. You should actually expect the auditor to find mistakes. A perfect audit is actually a big giant red flag in the PTA world. So if you end up with perfect audit, go back and look for things and make sure that something didn't get missed, or ask for a second opinion. The audit form is not changing this year, at least not that I have been told. So I have a screenshot of the current audit form. You're going to want to print a copy of this form for the auditor and fill out the top part, which is the stuff where it says date, local unit ID, and so on and so forth. The current year is 2021. And you're going to use the checklist in the middle. Let me see if I have some annotation tools here. I bet I do. Go drawing. So you're going to want to use this checklist here to gather all of your information and present it, if possible, in that order. And I'm going to tell you why. If you present the information in that order, your auditor can go through your documentation super duper fast and verify that everything is there. Just check it off, boom, 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 and get those documents back to you really quickly. You don't want to be without your, especially if you have a June 30th fiscal year, you don't want to be without your books for the majority of the month of July. And with the 4th of July holiday falling like it is this year, most auditors aren't going to be working that week. So you're going to be middle of the month anyway before your audit can get done. So if you can present your information in the order that it's shown on the form, it'll make the process a whole lot easier for the auditor. And then down at the bottom, leave everything blank. And in the auditor column here, this column here, leave this blank. So you're going to fill in the PTA column, but not the auditor column, and then not this stuff down here. Leave all of that blank. All right. Now we're going to go through each of these required documents because some of it's a little bit confusing and there are duplicate lines on the audit form. And so I'm going to show you what you can ignore. The check register can either be physical, handwritten, or a printed list from QuickBooks or Excel. So if you are not a QuickBooks user, you will need to make sure you have at least the old-fashioned check register where things are handwritten, or some sort of Excel spreadsheet that shows that you kept track of the checks that you wrote throughout the year. You must include all of your expenses and income in that check register. So you'll have two columns. You'll have an expense column and you'll have an income column.
I'm on a meeting.
Then you're going to have 13 bank statements. You'll need the last bank statement from the year before. So if your fiscal year ends on May 31st, you'll need the May bank statement from 2020 all the way through to the May bank statement of 2021. If your fiscal year ends in June, you'll have June through June. So 13 total. That's the starting point for the audit. That final bank statement is the starting point. Remember that your bank statements must be signed by 3 people. This is an AIM requirement for your insurance. They have to be signed by the treasurer, the president, and someone who's not related to any signer on the account. So, and someone who's not on the account, which is typically best practice here is to have the principal do it. So the principal is always apprised of what's in the bank account and understands the finances. You don't have to do it that way. And if you are not actually meeting at the school with your principal on a regular basis, that may be challenging. But the main thing here is that you have to have 3 signatures: president, treasurer, and someone who's not on the account and not related to any signer. So you may have to backtrack a little bit on that and get those signatures collected. You will not be able to take your audit to your auditor until you receive that last bank statement, which is typically the 3rd or 4th day of the month. And you do need signatures on that statement before you deliver your audit. So schedule your audit accordingly. Just give yourself time for that statement to come in. Funds verification forms. These forms are confusing and challenging, and in my opinion, it needs to be revised. So I've submitted that feedback to Georgia PTA to have 2 different funds verification forms, one for cash and checks and one for electronic transactions. For now, you have one. Cash and checks and electronic deposits cannot be combined on a single funds verification form because they're deposited separately. So every time money goes in the account, you must have a funds verification form. Likewise, every time money goes out of the account, you must have a check request form. It doesn't matter if it's a single penny. You have to have the form to go with it. If you're making a cash or check deposit, you need to attach your deposit slip to the funds verification form that shows what you put in the bank. For electronic deposits, you'll also attach a detail statement, which is either a settlement statement from WePay, the payment report from Stripe. Some of you still have WePay if you're using that through Sign Up Genius, which is why I left it on here. The deposit report from Square, it's also called a transfer report now in Square, depending on which version you're using, and the activity detail in PayPal. You'll note that Venmo is not on this list. However, if you have set up Venmo and are using it for PTA purposes, you can print the detail report each time you make a transfer. So you'll need to attach that to your funds verification form just to show what was in and out of the account. Okay. Check requests need receipts or invoices attached to them. If you don't have a receipt, you have to attach documentation of why you don't have a receipt. So for example, let's say that you had some sort of event at the school that required school police to be there to direct traffic. School police department doesn't issue an invoice. They usually send an email that says, Police Officer Joe is going to cost you $40 an hour, and he'll be there for X number of hours, so here's what you'll owe. That counts as your invoice. So just make sure that you attach that to your check request. If you have a lost receipt, make sure that you attach a note that explains the situation. It can be handwritten, it can be typed. The easiest way to cover yourself on that is if it was an electronic transaction, such as a debit or credit card, to isolate that information from the bank statement or credit card statement and attach that as well with a written explanation of the fact that the receipt was lost. If it was a cash or check transaction, make sure you don't have more than 1 or 2. And I'll let you all read between the lines there. Voided checks must be attached to the original check request form. If you are not in the habit of keeping your voided checks, change your practice. That will be picked up on audit. If you void a check, you actually have to create a whole new check request for the new check. 2 separate check requests, one for the voided one, that's the receipt for the voided one, and then the new one gets the receipt against which you're writing the check. All right, treasurer's reports. And again, I know I'm going quickly, but you're going to get this deck afterwards, so you'll have all of this information and we can take questions too. At the end, after we're finished, whatever. At minimum, the treasurer's reports have to include 3 things: the starting balance for the reporting period, the income and expenses for the reporting period, typically sorted by budget item. It's not a good idea just to say we had $500 in and $500 out. You need to say what it was for. And then the ending balance for the reporting period. The district treasurer's reports showed a really good example of that, the ones that Amanda presented at spring conference. If you need an example of a treasurer's report, we can certainly send you that. I use a different format. I have a table format in Word that I go through and fill in information, including checks that haven't cleared, upcoming significant expenses, number of members for that month, those kinds of things, just because it creates a transparency for the entire group. So if you'd like that template, just let me know and I'll be happy to send it to you. The budget. This is most frequently the most frequently missing set of documents in an audit, in my opinion, which is surprising because we are a budget-driven organization. The initial approved budget must be in your files, and it needs to be dated and labeled as the adopted budget. So the date on that, and I usually use a red pen or something like that just to make it stand out. Adopted on whatever date in the top right corner. Then, if you make any amendments throughout the year, you print that, label it accordingly, and date it. So amended on date, and so on and so forth. A lot of our units do budget amendments at every single general meeting and have several general meetings throughout the year. So you may have 4 or 5 versions of the budget throughout the year, and that's perfectly fine. The minutes also must reflect both adoption and amendments, that the information was presented, that there was discussion time, and that it was voted on. If it doesn't show those 3 things, the budget is not technically correctly adopted or amended. And if you haven't, I want to just reiterate that if some of this information is new to you or you haven't been following these kinds of practices throughout the year, that's fine. This will help you for next year because most of you are staying on in one role or another. So again, it's not a huge deal if some of this stuff is not perfect this year. This is just the way it's supposed to be done. Speaking of minutes, the treasurer needs a full set of minutes. There are 2 ways to do this. The secretary can submit his or her binder for the audit, or the treasurer can keep a full set of minutes throughout the year. I generally keep a full set of minutes when I'm in the treasurer role, just because I want to be able to match up everything. And it helps me have the big picture view of everything that's going on within the unit. As the treasurer, that's kind of important. I generally recommend that the minutes be arranged categorically first. So all of your EC meetings, then all of your board of directors meetings, and then all of your general membership meetings. Then chronologically. So however they happen throughout the year. Some of you may be at smaller units that only have an executive committee that functions both as the EC and the board of directors. But technically you should be having at least a couple of board of directors meetings throughout the year. And if you're doing reflections, you should have a reflections chair. Since you have members, you should have a membership chair, legislation and advocacy chair. I can keep going. So your council will help you with messaging to recruit those kinds of committee chairs. And PTA is one of those organizations where more voices are actually better. So the board of directors, because of that, serves a really important purpose, which means that the executive committee is not the sole small group running the show. All right, so any questions about what I've done thus far, what I've said thus far? Yep, I agree. Lori posted in the chat, uploading the minutes to Member Hub in the future will make this process easier. That is absolutely true. If you have put your minutes in Member Hub this year, you can actually document that in your treasurer's records, and you can say refer to Member Hub and just provide a login to Member Hub for the auditor. So that's actually acceptable. All right, last on this side of the required documents is the bylaws. If you do not have a physical copy of your bylaws, please email cccptapres@gmail.com, like right now, and get your bylaws. And she should have plenty of time to respond to you to provide that to you. You can also email Georgia PTA. Ty, T-Y-E, at georgepta.org can send them to you. You must include a copy of your bylaws in your audit files. There are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, that tells the auditor when your fiscal year is. begins and ends. Number two, it establishes what kinds of officers are supposed to be elected, because if you are over 50K, you're filing a 990 and the auditor needs those people's titles and names. So that's a starting point to know kind of what to ask if the auditor is doing your 990 for you. All right, on the right side of the form in that document gathering section, the top line says General Ledger Report. In double entry accounting, the general ledger is a very long, complicated, unreadable document. It's very, very long. If you have done business all year, you're talking 50 or 60 pages. It is a combination of your check requests, funds verification forms, and bank statements, all your reconciliations that have been done. And that becomes your general ledger. If you have a check register, that will suffice as your general ledger. So in a sense, this line is duplicative, so you can skip it. The annual financial report is actually required. It is not your budget. It is a financial report, which is different. It has to include, it looks a lot like the treasurer's report, by the way, but it includes your starting balance at the beginning of the year, the gross income by budget line, gross expenses by budget line, net income for the year, and ending balance. So this is creating the beginning of a balance sheet for the PTA. And if you don't have, it doesn't have to be fancy. It can be done in Excel. If you're not using either QuickBooks or Nonprofit Plus or Membership Toolkit, you can just do a quick one in Excel. And Amanda Weber has a template for that we've used for District 13. It's very simple. You can expand it. It's also outlined in the Leadership Resource Guide, exactly what's expected there. Okay, canceled checks or bank images from your bank statement. There is no bank in the world these days that will give you canceled checks. And that's all fine, good and well. The problem here is that most banks charge extra to provide copies of those canceled checks on the bank statement. So Credit Union of Georgia charges $5 every month for that. If you have electronic access to your bank account to print your statements and that sort of thing, you can actually download those images into a Word document. It takes about 5 minutes a month to do that. And that can be presented in lieu of having canceled checks or a bank statement with images. If you are with a bank that does images for free, let us know who that is. One of the things that came up last year was since it kind of is a pain to get check copies now, that it might be considered optional to provide those, but this is the only way that your auditor will be able to verify that every check that was written had 2 signatures on it. And because that is a rule that we have to follow, this is not an optional step. Copy of your insurance. All you have to include here is the receipt that you actually paid for your insurance, or just the declaration page, the first page of the policy. You do not have to print the entire policy. I do encourage you to read the entire policy. You will fall asleep very quickly, but there's actually some interesting information buried in there if you choose to read all the way through it. But it is not necessary to print it. I do recommend that you save an electronic copy of your insurance policy somewhere where your entire executive committee can get to it. On a hub in Member Hub would be ideal. So if you have an EC hub, that would be the best place to put it. If you don't have an EC hub, then you could do Google Drive or Dropbox, something like that. Some shared location where everybody has access to it. Treasurer's reports on column 2 over here is duplicated from column 1, so you can skip this one. Itemized statements and receipts of bills paid, same thing. That is your check requests. So you can skip that one. Copy of last year's audit report and 990 or not, and that's either 990 EZ or 990 or the 990N. Both of these are required because this is the starting point for the current audit. If you're for your 990, if you had an EZ or a 990, all of the pages are required. So for an EZ, that's a minimum of 18 pages. For the 990, it's more like 25 or 30. The whole thing needs to be in there because there's information in the schedules that needs to be transferred to the new return. If it's a postcard, so you were under 50,000 for the year, only the confirmation that it was actually accepted is required. And then the final bank statement down here, that's a duplicate of the bank statements in column 1. But again, it's a good idea to double check that you have that last bank statement from the previous year. All right, let's talk a little bit about the audit process. Every auditor essentially does the exact same thing, but basically the auditor's responsibility is to look at every sheet of paper that is included in the files. Literally, every single sheet of paper. Most of us add up the receipts to make sure that what's attached to the check request matches the check amount that was written. We verify that the numbers match. So if your P&L, your profit and loss statement, your financial statement says you made $35,000, we're going to make sure that that's exactly what you made. If it says you spent $47,000, we're going to add all that up too, just to make sure that those numbers match. The auditor completes the form, that page 1, and then the page 2 that includes the balance sheet at the top, and then provides any notes for procedural changes. And in some cases, the reason there's an asterisk here is that in some cases, the auditor will prepare your 990 EZ or Form 990. If you don't need a 990, this is not relevant to you. But if you're over 50,000 in income, you need to have that discussion with your auditor up front, whether you want him or her to do that 990 for you, because there will be an extra fee for that. The 990 comes in 3 primary versions. There's actually another version, the PF, that's for private foundation, but that doesn't apply to us. But the 3 that we see are the 990N, which is under 50,000 in revenue, the 990 EZ, which is $50,000 to $199,999, and then the 990 long form, which is $200,000 or higher. You'll see the notes on here with recommendations of who should do this. You can certainly tackle your own 990. There are a couple of little tricky spots. So if you choose to do that, make sure somebody takes a look at it before you submit it, just so that one checkbox doesn't get missed. But I mean, you can certainly try it on your own for the EZ in particular. The postcard is 5 minutes. The long form 990 is a lot of work, and it's very different from the EZ. And I would strongly recommend that you have somebody with experience doing that form do it for you. It's worth the money you'll spend. Important. This is super duper duper important. Thanks to COVID, a new rule got lost in translation somewhere last year. There was a new rule published in spring of 2020 that 990s, forms EZ and regular 990, the long form, had to be e-filed starting on July 1st. And it was for organizations with fiscal years ending after July 1st. However, the IRS at some point along the way stopped opening mail. I'm just going to let that sink in for a minute. And thousands of PTA units got letters saying that they had never submitted their Form 990 for last year. And I want to thank the units who spent time on the phone speaking with the IRS, Little River being one of them. There are others who spent quite a bit of time on the phone. Hickory Flat did. I believe Avery called as well to get information about how to fix this problem. and they were each given, wait for it, slightly different information. However, if you pull it all together in one big melting pot of information and then go look at the rule, you now have to e-file. So that involves a different process than just filling out the form, printing it, and mailing it in. In order to e-file, you have to have a number. It's called a PTIN, a Prepared Tax Identification Number. And there are a couple of other rules. So if you have to do, there's a workaround for that, by the way, if you want to tackle your EZ or your 990. I don't think we have anybody doing a 990 this year. But the EZ, if you want to tackle it on your own, just give me a shout and I'll walk you through what you need to do to get around. There's a loophole to get around the need for that PTIN. But you do have to e-file your EZ. So if you've already arranged for your auditor to do your EZ for you, that'll be taken care of and you won't have to worry about it. All right, due dates and submission processes. I left last year's information in here because I have not seen this process yet in MemberHub, but MemberHub is rolling out a way for you to upload your audit document and your 990 document into the hub, and it will automatically notify Georgia PTA that you have done it. So no more e-filing, or not e-filing, but emailing or physical mailing or whatever of these forms. Again, I haven't seen it yet, so I don't want to promise exactly how it's going to work. I know that council is planning MemberHub training this summer. You can also attend MemberHub training with the MemberHub folks, and they are super duper nice and very knowledgeable. So I would encourage you to consider attending training with them about these new features. But supposedly it is launching soon if it hasn't already. I did not check today to see if it had launched, and I haven't received a notification that it has. Same thing for the 990. Where it's done now is in the admin console. So if you click admin console and then audit financial reviews, you'll get to a screen that looks like this one over here on the right. If you click admin console and form 990 confirmations, it'll look like this. Follow the instructions that are in there for now if you are ready to submit before MemberHub turns on the document upload feature. What questions do you have?
Hey, Susan, it's Scott. It's not really a question, but I just working with our own council and with Mill Creek, some of the, what do you call it? On MemberHub under unit data, where fiscal year end date, some of those are still not correct. So use your bylaws, don't look at MemberHub and go, oh, it's June 30th, because it may not be.
I physically went in and changed yours.
Yes, ours is correct. I mean, Lower Rivers is correct. I was looking for Mill Creek, and I think I confused everyone on council because I thought it was June 30th, because I think there still says June 30th.
Okay, so that's actually a really good point. I thought we had most of those fixed, but it's possible we missed some along the way. So when you go into MemberHub, do check that. You can go onto your unit data page and check to see what it says your fiscal year end is, and then compare it to your bylaws. And if there is a mismatch, email Tanisha at, and it's Telrod, Telrod at georgiapta.org, and she will fix it for you. So you should not have a mismatch there. It should be accurate. Yeah, but that is very confusing. You're right about that.
Thank you.
Telrod.
At georgiapta.org.
Okay, just making sure.
Yep.
And I second the member hub trainings. So
Mhm.
they have live trainings going on all summer, especially for their I think it's member hub. Is it 21, Scott? I kept calling it 2.1, but I think
Yes,
21.
21.
They've adopted the QuickBooks methodology there, calling it by year instead of by version, which I think is actually smart. And I think what you're also going to see is that I know I'm not doing member hub training tonight because I retired from that. But I think what you're going to see is that they stop rolling out updates so rapidly. They slow that down and they have one major update per year and call it 22, 23, 24. I will say that from when we started with Member Hub to where we are now is night and day, light years better. So kudos to them for listening to feedback and making changes.
Yes. And I think council, we're just going to do an overview. So if you want an in-depth guide to member hub, do their trainings.
Yeah.
We're going to do a walkthrough of where you need to go and what you need to see.
Mhm. Amanda, do you have anything you want to add from the state perspective?
Sorry, I was on mute. No, I think that was very comprehensive, and you know, we're still waiting on those updates of Member Hub, but you know, hopefully they're coming this summer. So next fall, when we start getting into this, we'll see some new features within the Member Hub and make it a little more user friendly. So we're excited about that.
Wow, it's a quiet group.
I know.
Everybody has reached. Is it school year fatigue?
Yes.
It has been a hard year. So,
Well, okay. So on that note, I know I said this at the district conference, but I just want to reiterate, it has been a challenging year and every single one of you has stepped up and stuck with it. And I cannot begin to tell you how much your schools, your parents, your kids, your council leadership, your district leadership appreciate the effort that you have put in this year. This has been the weirdest year I have ever experienced. I had a kid who was shut out of school on day 7 and then went hybrid a few weeks later. Amanda was in the same group over at Etowah. So, and hybrid was, we'll call it unique because I want to put a positive spin on it. But it made PTA leadership really difficult this year. It made connecting with the kids, with the teachers, and with the administration really hard. So thank you to each and every one of you for sticking with it this year and for committing to continue to serve into the next year and hopefully beyond. I will actually be rolling off of leadership at the district level and returning to my roots as a local unit treasurer at Etowah. And when that is done, I'm going to retire completely.
we appreciate all your years of service. And thankfully, she's still going to be around to help us out because we can't let her go away and take all that knowledge with her.
I'm always happy to help. And I've spoken to a lot of people who were on this call tonight at one point in time or another. So, oh, Catherine just posted a survey in the chat. She says the new council members are planning for next year and there's a survey that they would like to get some input on. So if you have not yet completed that survey, that would be a great idea. Council, what?
I said it would be super helpful.
Yeah. So council's looking to provide you with the resources and the training that you need for next year. So your input there will be really helpful.
And we're also looking for board of directors. If you would like to be a chairperson, I'm sending that link too.
What chairs are you looking for?
What chairs are we looking for? We are looking for, let me make sure I get the list right. So we're gonna do diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we're copying national PTA here. So we would like to do a diversity, equity, and inclusion. We do have some co-chairs on that, but committee members would be awesome. Membership, of course, we need a membership chair. We need a reflections chair. I know Kathy Sanders kind of has intimidated us all with her amazingness as being the reflections chair, but she is totally willing to help and be a committee member. She just cannot chair it and do her business at the same time. We are going to need a bylaws, advocacy, and legislative chairperson. We need a family engagement chairperson. Hey, it's really fun. I promise I did it myself. And community outreach. So we are looking for those chair people. And if you have if there's something not on this list and you feel passionate about, please reach out to us and we will make you a chairperson of that passion as well.
Yeah, and just as to reiterate the fact that Catherine said they were following the national PTA model for committee chairs, that's how local units should really be set up too.
Yeah. So we're totally modeling off of national and state. They also have all of these chair positions.
Yeah. All right. And Scott posted a note. Don't forget that CLT registration closes tonight at 11:55 p.m. If you have not done your CLT registration, you should do so. At a minimum, you should plan to attend the virtual event. It's really good information. I will be attending virtually because of my work schedule. I know that several people are going to be attending in person as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not too late to register.
Yeah, I'll be there virtually. It's my kid's birthday weekend. Can't exactly go to Columbus for that. Also, National PTA's convention is 2 weeks later. So if you want to look into registering for that, and it's virtual, and it is a lot of really good training and information.
Last year's national conference was fantastic.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
I hope they continue to do it virtually because otherwise I'm going to have to figure out how to leave my family for a week.
I think they're planning on keeping it virtual just because of the cost that's associated with doing it in person. But it was, the information that was presented last year was absolutely the most valuable PTA information I've ever gotten.
Yes, it was so good.
And the format was cool. It was super cool.
We had dance parties. It was a lot of fun. I mean, for making something completely virtual, it was a lot of fun, and I felt involved, and I got to chat with people that, from all over the country. So it was really neat.
Cool. All right. So we'll give you back some time tonight. Go spend time with your families, whatever you want to do. Eat dinner. That's where I'm heading in just a minute because I hear the dishes rattling around upstairs. I put the 15-year-old in charge of dinner tonight, so might be peanut butter and jelly.
Good luck.
Thank you, Susan.
Of course, anytime. We will get this deck out to you. It'll be posted on Member Hub within the next 24 hours. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. Most of you have my contact information, but I'll put it there anyway. Susan Honea at gmail.com.
Thank you, Susan, for
All right. Bye, y'all.
Thank you very much.